History isn't just made by heroes, it's often unmade by mistakes. The stories we inherit are shaped as much by human error as by acts of courage. Behind every celebrated victory or infamous defeat, there are choices, some bold, some reckless, and some that go disastrously wrong. We tend to remember the heroes, the grand gestures, and the moments of glory. But history is just as often written in the shadows, by the overlooked blunders, the missed opportunities, and the quiet unraveling of plans that once seemed unstoppable. The truth is, the fate of empires can hinge on a single miscalculation. Sometimes it's not the strength of the enemy, but the weakness within that changes everything. The Siege of Vienna in 1683 is usually told as a dramatic rescue, Christian Europe on the brink, saved by a Polish king's cavalry charge. It's a story of last-minute salvation, of desperate defenders and heroic allies. But that story misses the real lesson. The seeds of Ottoman defeat were sown long before the final battle. The outcome was shaped not just by what happened on the field, but by decisions made in tents and council chambers, by ambitions and misjudgments that set the stage for disaster. The real story is about strategic blunders, not just battlefield heroics. The mighty Ottoman Empire, led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, seemed unstoppable. Their armies had swept across continents, their banners feared throughout Europe. Yet, his own decisions, misjudging his enemy, misreading the political landscape, and misunderstanding time, set the stage for disaster. Kara Mustafa's confidence blinded him to the risks, and his desire for a perfect victory clouded his judgment. The Ottomans, famed for speed and decisive action, became trapped in a slow siege. Kara Mustafa's ambition to capture Vienna intact gave the defenders what they needed most: time. Days turned into weeks, and the window for a swift victory closed. That time allowed Vienna's scattered allies to unite. Messages raced across Europe, and armies that might have arrived too late instead marched together. The story of Vienna is not just about the heroes who saved it, but about the mistakes that gave them a chance. It's a lesson in how arrogance and poor strategy can topple even the most powerful empires. We'll explore how the Ottomans' choices doomed their campaign, and how the fate of Vienna was sealed long before the final charge. The real drama isn't just the cavalry charge, it's the mistakes that made it possible. Sometimes history turns, not on acts of valor, but on errors no one saw coming. The greatest turning points are often born from the smallest missteps. Let's look beyond the legend and see what really happened. By examining the overlooked details and forgotten decisions, we can uncover the true story behind the Siege of Vienna, and learn how history is shaped as much by failure as by triumph. Vienna in 1683 was more than a city. It was the gateway to Central Europe, a crossroads where East met West and where the fate of nations would soon be decided. Its ancient streets echoed with the footsteps of merchants, soldiers, and diplomats, all aware that Vienna stood as a bulwark between two worlds. Whoever controlled Vienna controlled the Danube, the vital artery of commerce and movement, and with it, the flow of goods, ideas, and armies. The city's position made it the linchpin of trade and the fate of empires, a prize coveted by rulers for centuries. For the Ottomans, Vienna was the ultimate prize, a city that had eluded even the legendary Suleiman the Magnificent. Now, decades later, the dream of conquest burned brighter than ever, promising glory and expansion for the empire. For the Habsburgs, Vienna was the heart of their realm. Losing it would mean not just the collapse of their empire, but the unraveling of centuries of dynastic ambition and the loss of their place among Europe's great powers. Even rival powers like France, who often opposed the Habsburgs, recognized that an Ottoman victory in Vienna would threaten the delicate balance of power across the continent. The fate of Europe itself seemed to hang in the balance. The city's fall would have shifted the continent's balance of power forever, redrawing borders and rewriting the destinies of kingdoms from the Atlantic to the Black Sea. For Sultan Mehmed IV and his ambitious Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa, Vienna was both a strategic necessity and a matter of pride. Their eyes were fixed on the city, determined to succeed where others had failed. The Ottoman army that marched west was massive, over 150,000 strong, with elite janissaries, swift cavalry, and powerful siege cannons. It was one of the largest forces Europe had ever seen, a testament to the seriousness of their intent. This was no border raid. It was a campaign to conquer a capital and reshape Europe. The stakes were enormous, with the future of nations and peoples hanging in the balance. All of Europe watched anxiously as the Ottoman tide rolled toward Vienna's gates. From peasants in distant villages to kings in their palaces, everyone sensed that history was about to be made. Inside Vienna, tension mounted. The city's fate would decide the future of the continent, and every citizen, soldier, and leader knew what was at stake. Vienna was the linchpin. Lose it, and the map of Europe would be redrawn, with consequences echoing for generations. The March on Vienna was a gamble for glory, power, and survival. Every decision, every movement, could tip the scales of history. The world held its breath, waiting to see if Vienna would stand or fall, and with it, the future of Europe itself. The Ottomans built their empire on speed and shock, swift campaigns, rapid victories, but the 1683 campaign was different. Moving 150,000 men and siege equipment across the Balkans was slow and exhausting. By the time they reached Vienna in July, the campaign season was slipping away. This delay gave the Habsburgs time to reinforce and rally allies. The Ottoman army, a mix of core troops and vassal contingents like the Tatars, was better suited for fast raids than a drawn-out siege. The Tatars terrorized the countryside, but this only hardened Vienna's resolve. The slow advance warned Europe and gave the defenders precious time. The Ottomans' greatest strength, speed, was lost before the siege even began. The clock was already ticking against them. At Vienna, Kara Mustafa faced a choice: attack immediately or lay siege. He chose the slow siege, hoping to capture the city intact and claim its wealth. This decision was driven by ambition and greed, and it was a fatal error. Every day spent digging trenches gave Vienna's defenders, and their allies, more time. Kara Mustafa underestimated the urgency. He believed no relief army could threaten him, but his slow, methodical approach handed the initiative to his enemies. The defenders held out, and Europe began to unite. The Grand Vizier gambled that Vienna would fall before help arrived. Instead, his delay allowed a coalition to form. The siege became a race against time, a race he was losing. His obsession with a bloodless victory blinded him to the real danger. The slow siege set the stage for disaster. Inside Vienna, things were desperate. Outnumbered defenders, disease, and dwindling food. But under Count Starhemberg, the city refused to break. Soldiers and citizens repaired walls, launched daring raids, and fought underground battles against Ottoman sappers. These counterattacks slowed the Ottoman advance and kept morale alive. The defenders became experts at intercepting enemy tunnels, fighting brutal battles in the darkness. Every day Vienna held out was a victory. The siege dragged on through summer heat and misery. The Ottomans expected a quick surrender. Instead, they faced stubborn resistance. The city's resilience bought precious time for its allies. Hope inside Vienna rested on the belief that help was coming. For Kara Mustafa, frustration grew as the siege stalled. The city that was supposed to fall easily became a grinding stalemate. The longer Vienna held, the more the odds shifted. The defenders' courage turned the tide. As Vienna held out, Europe's fractured powers began to unite. Emperor Leopold fled, but his diplomats worked tirelessly for help. The Pope framed the conflict as a holy war, persuading Poland's King Sobieski to join. The Treaty of Warsaw sealed the alliance. Meanwhile, Kara Mustafa ignored the growing threat, focused only on his siege. Armies from Poland, Bavaria, and the German states slowly gathered. The coalition was difficult to organize, but the Ottomans' delay made it possible. By late August, the relief army was real. The clock Kara Mustafa ignored was now his enemy. The fate of Vienna and Europe hung in the balance. Kara Mustafa's next blunder was fatal. He left the hills west of Vienna undefended. He could have blocked the coalition's approach, but kept his army tied to the siege. The high ground, perfect for artillery and attack, was left open. On September 11th, the coalition crossed the Danube and seized the hills with ease. Ottoman soldiers awoke to see enemy banners above them. The besiegers had become the besieged, trapped between Vienna's walls and a powerful army. Kara Mustafa's arrogance let his enemies choose the battlefield. The stage was set for a decisive clash. The trap was sprung. The Battle of Vienna began with brutal infantry combat as coalition forces pushed down from the hills. Kara Mustafa, realizing too late, tried to defend and attack at once. Chaos reigned. By afternoon, the Ottomans were exhausted and disorganized. Then came the moment that would become legend. King Sobieski ordered the largest cavalry charge in history. 18,000 horsemen, led by 3,000 Polish winged hussars, thundered down the slopes. The sight and sound of the hussars shattered Ottoman morale. The charge smashed through the Ottoman lines, cutting straight for Kara Mustafa's command tent. Panic swept the camp. Soldiers fled, abandoning weapons and treasure. The Ottoman army collapsed in hours. Kara Mustafa escaped, but the siege was broken. Vienna was saved by a coalition's courage and the Ottomans' mistakes. The legend of the winged hussars was born, but the real victory was months in the making. The mighty Ottoman army was routed, the city endured, and Europe was changed forever. The aftermath was swift and dramatic. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the smoky haze, the true scale of the battle's devastation became clear. The ground was littered with the remnants of a once mighty army, and the silence was broken only by the cautious footsteps of the victors. Coalition soldiers found the Ottoman camp abandoned and overflowing with riches. Tents were filled with treasures hastily left behind, gold, silks, and weapons, evidence of the Ottomans' confidence before their sudden flight. The victors marveled at the wealth, but also at the speed with which fortune had changed hands. But the true victory was strategic. The Ottoman threat to Central Europe was broken. The balance of power shifted overnight and the coalition's unity had proven stronger than anyone expected. The maps of Europe would never look the same again. The defeat shattered the myth of Ottoman invincibility. For centuries their armies had seemed unstoppable, but now, their banners lay broken in the mud, and their soldiers retreated in disarray. The empire entered a long decline, losing territory and prestige with each passing year. Once proud fortresses crumbled and the borders of the empire slowly receded, marking the end of an era. The Habsburgs and their allies pushed the Ottomans back, reclaiming lands lost for centuries. Towns that had lived in fear now celebrated their freedom, and hope returned to a battered continent. King Sobieski was hailed as a savior, Starhemberg was promoted. Their names became legends, celebrated in song and story for generations to come. Kara Mustafa's fate was grim, executed by order of the Sultan for his failure. His downfall was swift, a stark warning to those who gambled and lost on the grand stage of empire. His ambition and misjudgments had doomed his army. In the quiet aftermath, the weight of lost lives and squandered opportunities hung heavy in the air. The lesson of Vienna is clear. Strategy matters more than spectacle. Careful planning, unity, and adaptability proved more powerful than sheer numbers or bravado. The Ottoman defeat was not inevitable. It was the result of critical errors. Miscommunication, overconfidence, and ignored warnings sealed their fate. The real story is written in months of slow digging, missed opportunities, and ignored warnings. The siege was a test of endurance, and every day brought new chances for both sides to change the outcome. The winged hussars provided the drama, but the outcome was decided by mistakes. Heroism alone could not overcome poor decisions and missed chances. History is shaped as much by quiet errors as by heroic charges. The stories we remember are often those of glory, but the truth lies in the details left behind. Vienna's siege is a lesson in how empires fall, not with a bang, but with a series of overlooked blunders. In the end, it is the small, silent moments, the warnings unheeded, the plans left unfinished, that shape the fate of nations.